All right. Good morning, everyone. We'll hop on in. So good morning and welcome to Global Entrepreneurship Week Sacramento Day 2. And Global Entrepreneurship Week Sacramento is powered by Western Health Advantage. So we appreciate all of you being here. So we're excited to bring to you a conversation about changing the world by empowering yourself through entrepreneurship. And we hope to share with you how you can ultimately become and take your engineering skills and become an entrepreneur and really create some solutions that will change our world. So we're excited to have partnered with the College of Engineering and Computer Science at Sacramento State, as well as Clean Start in developing and running this event this morning. My name's Cameron Law, and I'm the Interim Executive Director at the Carlson Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and I'm also serving as a Sacramento organizer for Global Entrepreneurship Week. For those of you that don't know, the Carlson Center serves as a regional hub and platform for providing approachable and accessible entrepreneurial education, community, and support to enable startup founders and students of all backgrounds to explore and launch their businesses. Our mission is to make innovation and entrepreneurship pervasive throughout the greater Sacramento region, and we have this clear vision to make this region a premier hub for innovation and entrepreneurship. You don't have to be a student or an alumni of Sacramento State to engage in our programs and resources. In line with the Anchor University and initiative, we really want to anchor our support and our resources in the community and help mobilize new business creations and support and scaling current business operations. So if you are an entrepreneur or a student looking to start a business, we offer a variety of programs and resources that serve entrepreneurs at all stages of the entrepreneurial journey. And this week, Global Entrepreneurship Week falls under what we call our Discover programs. These programs are aimed at inspiring you to take next steps on the ideas you've been thinking about of how you can save the world and ultimately create some solutions for our society. Additionally, we want to create those different on-ramps. So really recognizing that there's different ways to plug into that entrepreneurial journey, and we want to create those on-ramps for you throughout this week. Our aim is really to help mobilize your ideas and have the Carlson Center be a partner and a resource for you in that business ideation and creation process. For those of you that don't know, Global Entrepreneurship Week is indeed a global week. So today we join over 180 communities in a week-long celebration of innovation and entrepreneurship. This week is full of events, activities, pitch competitions, opportunities to network and connect with like-minded individuals who are passionate about innovation and entrepreneurship. What we love most about this week is it gets everyone in one space, albeit virtually. I wish we were obviously in person, but really bringing that community together, whether you're a student, an entrepreneur, an investor, researcher, faculty, or just a startup champion and really want to grow the Sacramento region's innovation and entrepreneurial community. And with that said, we're really excited to have you here for day 2 and for this amazing discussion. And I want to introduce Thomas Hall, who's the Executive Director of Clean Start, who's one of our key partners in putting on this event today, and also the college pitch competition taking place tomorrow evening. I've really enjoyed working with both Thomas and Gary Simon. The Clean Start is just a tremendous resource in our community, and I couldn't be more proud to have a partner in them. So I will hand it over and share that. He'll be sharing a screen for the next part of the session.
Thank you very much, Cameron. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Thomas Hall, Executive Director of Clean Start, and we are a regional accelerator of clean tech businesses trying to turn Sacramento into a clean tech hub. We've partnered with Sac State, the College of Engineering and Computer Science, along with the Carlson Center, to put on programs to connect students with the resources that we have so that we can see some of the cool new technologies coming out of the college to make a big difference in the world. We're a 501c3 business located out of Hacker Lab in Midtown Sacramento. And I'm going to share with you guys in the chat a link to my slides. So that way, if you want to, you can go in there. I do have things linked in them. So when I refer to things that are linked, you can go in there and click on them. All right. So with that, our agenda today is going to be a Fireside Chat with Dr. Jarwal and Gary Simon, a regional startup network overview, a Clean Start overview, and then a panel discussion. I want to highlight your Zoom controls, the mute and the chat function. If you have questions or want to discuss things, please engage through the chat. It's a great place to connect and learn and really engage with other audience members that are here. Now, you notice it's not a fireside chat anymore. It's a solar side chat because we're going all renewable with that. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Gary Simon, Clean Start Chair. Gary Simon is currently the chairman of Clean Start. a nonprofit dedicated to accelerating the success of clean tech businesses in the Sacramento region. Mr. Simon's career spans 46 years as a senior executive with 2 Fortune 500 companies and CEO of 4 small startups. The president of international companies, worldwide energy company consultant, and government services. Most recently, he was the president and CEO of Atrex Energy, a manufacturer of small, high-efficiency, ceramic-based power generators for off-grid markets. He was also chairman of a publicly traded Capstone Turbine Corporation, and is the chairman of Smart Power, a nonprofit organizing and promoting clean energy use. Mr. Simon has a BA from Indiana University and an MS from the University of California, Davis. I'd also like to welcome Dr. Jawa, Assistant Dean at the College of Engineering and Computer Science. He has 25 years of academic, industrial, and entrepreneurial experience in engaging engineers and is renowned for his innovative, engaging teaching pedagogy. He's received the California State University System's highest honor, the Wang Family Excellence Outstanding Faculty Award, as well as the Provost Award, the Northrop Grumman Award for Excellence in Teaching, and the Fellowship in Biomimicry Institute. At the Rowan University in Glassboro, New Jersey, he was one of the first faculty members recruited to develop a new engineering program with $100 million donations. And with that, I would like to welcome Gary to start our fireside chat.
Well, thank you very much, Thomas, and thanks everybody for joining. I'm sure there's going to be some more people scrolling on here, but the purpose of this chat in the beginning is just to give some perspective. What's available to you as students, what's available to you as a career in entrepreneurship, and both Joe and I have experience with big organizations and in startups. So what we thought might be useful is just a little bit of a chat as to our journey, how we did this, and then talk about some resources that are available to you if you want to pursue a career in entrepreneurship. So if I look back on my career, when I was in the position of students, undergraduates at Sac State, that was more than 50 years ago. That's a bit of a frightening thought when I finally put it together in my head this morning. But back then, I had no notion of doing things on my own. The career paths were pretty much, get with the biggest, most secure organization you could find and just build your way up the ladder internally. This is in the era before there was an Apple computer. Nobody had heard of Steve Jobs at this point. And even though there were elements of the entrepreneurial revolution starting on the East Coast and the West Coast, in Indiana, we hadn't heard of it. So I was scratching my head as to what I'm going to do and what skills I would need. And as many in that generation, by the time you got to graduation, you said, well, the only thing I know how to do is to attend school. So let's go get a master's and a PhD. So it was only during that period when I was in graduate school that I started doing some internships. I started looking around at how this whole thing works. And then, gosh, being in California, so much different. And the whole explosion, Apple computers and Lotus and all these other things started happening around me. But I never had the intention of, I'm going to do that. So I didn't avail myself of opportunities that are out there to learn how to do it well. I was just always stuck in the join a big company mode. Now, ironically, the biggest company I joined when I got my postgraduate degree was the state of California, working in the legislature, but that led to a career path with some of the bigger utilities in the country. And then through them and the resources they had, got involved with small companies and eventually decided to go out on my own. But the interesting thing is, never did I have an intention of doing this. I just kind of stumbled around, and I sure could have done it better if I had known this is the way the world was going to turn out for me. So it's great that now there are so many resources available to you as students in thinking about an alternative career. And in the mix we are in California, it's hardly an alternative career. Everybody starts thinking about how they can become the next Steve Jobs at an early age. I just want to give you a perspective on that. This is relatively new with the perspective of 50 years on it as to how all this is done. But it's great now that there are many centers of entrepreneurship at universities. There are many accelerators. There are many business incubators. In the Sacramento region, they're all over the place. This is new. This is not what it was like in 1970 when I got here. It was not what it was like even in the 1990s. It was just beginning. But you have the advantage of all that's gone before you in terms of ways that you can learn. So, Jawa, why don't you give a little bit of perspective on your journey? Because you've done both things with big organizations and done an entrepreneurial business or two. What's your experience been like?
My journey has been a bit different. I came to America about 30 years ago as a graduate student for a PhD program. Before that, I worked in a large organization that was creating aircraft engines for military purposes. So I was on that side of working for large corporations, and I wasn't very, very happy with what I was doing. I felt I wasn't productive. Then I felt, okay, I should go back and do a PhD. Maybe I can be a professor and work with students. And that's the reason I came to America. But when I came here, the opportunities that I saw were very different. I had never seen these many opportunities for anyone ever. I lived in 3 different continents. In Asia, I lived in Russia. Never saw the opportunities that was presented to anyone in America in early 90s. So pretty soon I became a professor, but then I got this entrepreneurial bug. When you get that, especially if you, the young people may not remember, but if you go back in 90s when the internet boom started, the Netscape and Yahoo and all these companies were going public, and they were all like from a $10 million company to $10 billion company in a matter of days. It was eye-opening. And I was very interested in education. So I got involved in the online education business long before Coursera, long before Khan Academy in 1997. There was no DSL. There was no fiber optics. The dial-up modem, I don't know if you know what that is. You got to use your phone line to get onto the internet. And, we developed a great company. I quit my job at a moment when, against my wife's advice, I quit my job as a professor, started a company with very little money, raised a seed capital from 0 users to 20,000 users in a matter of 2 years, and from a 0 valuation to $30 million in 1999. And then I saw all of them go away, became so close to success in terms of finances, then everything gone after the bubble in 2000 and 2001, and I had to find a job. So I came back as a professor. I'm sharing this story not because of my failure financially as an entrepreneur, but in America, what the so-called American dream I reached in 4 years. I came as a graduate student. In 4 or 5 years, I was able to quit my job and start a company, and then saw the foreclosure of that company. Then I could start again at ground zero and build again another career again. In some ways, I think it's inspirational, and for young people to know that you can really do anything you want in America because the opportunities are abound. But anyhow, my failure in my first business venture led to multiple success for many other people, many local entrepreneurs, my students, as well as my own children who run a successful business. 2 of my daughters are entrepreneurs and they run their own business. So that is in a nutshell. In this 20, 30 years, I have traveled around the country, traveled around the world, a lot wiser now. I wish I knew a few things that I know now when I started the company. And that's why I feel the role of Carlson Center, Clean Start, and other organizations can be fantastic because these resources were not available to me. I didn't know everything. I had to learn on my own. I had to make so many mistakes that could be easily avoided today. So anyway, in a nutshell, here we are. Now I am an associate dean at the College of Engineering, and I came to Sac State only 3 months ago from Cal Poly Pomona. So that's the little background about me, and I'm very excited to be here.
Well, and then we're certainly glad to add you to the community here, Jala. But you said, there were so many things you wish you'd known before you started your journey. What are some of those? What advice would you have for students? What should you be learning now if you have an interest in becoming an entrepreneur?
Oh my goodness. First of all, there are two things. One is an attitude to be an entrepreneur or a mindset to be an entrepreneur is very different from being an engineer or being an employee in a company. Since I came from a humble background, I work hard. I always thought I can do whatever I want. In other words, I had the self-confidence that I could never fail. I think you got to be a little bit more humble. The whole entrepreneurial path taught me a humbling experience. One, even though you think you are ready, even though you think you are prepared, when you plunge into this journey, you realize you are totally unprepared. You realize that it's like I felt like a student who think I prepared for my exam so well, and then you go to the exam and open the paper, and you see everything looks Greek and Latin. I never saw anything like that before. So to be an entrepreneur, before you make the big move of leaving a job, if you are in a job, you got to think twice. The reason being, I'm not saying be risk averse. In fact, being an entrepreneur is taking risks, but there are a few things that you should have in place. First of all, are you really serious about the idea that you are trying to pitch? Are you convinced? If you are the only one judging, many times engineers think, I got a cool idea. The cool idea doesn't sell. Is there a real need that you identified? Or do you see a marketplace for that? Some of these questions are obvious, but when you are in the moment, you don't think about them. So you need resources to learn about whatever you are thinking to do. Is there really a market for it? Is there a benefit to the community or the people? Sometimes you think what you think is useful to people, but in reality, it is not. Especially with the engineers, they want to do this cool stuff, but the cool stuff is not necessarily the best stuff that is needed. So that's one thing. Second, the whole idea of working with people is something difficult for people to understand. An engineer, I can be in the lab, do a simulation, do a testing, and I can, 70% of the engineers are introverts. They don't want to talk to other people. You can make good money by being a programmer. But the moment you step outside that engineering domain, which is fantastic, I love being an engineer, but step outside, you have to work with other people. Often what you consider as trivial becomes more important. The market research, working with people, building a cross-disciplinary team. When I say cross-disciplinary, if you are in a business, it's not just what you know, it is how you are going to work with other people. But not only that, you are willing to compromise or trade off on ideas. It's not like you are stuck with this idea and I want to make this happen like an engineering product designer. So that skill, working with other people, maybe with the business people, maybe with the people from science or other group of people, is very, very critical. And often most engineering students don't know how to do that. So that's a second step. Then the resources, the whole idea behind raising money. Whether you raise money from seed capital or you are ready for a series 1, series 2, or a venture funding, that's a whole different ball game. You need to be educated about those things. Even when you are educated, often you feel you are not prepared. So these are all some of the ideas that came to my mind, but I hope these are all relevant, Gary.
No, it's great. And then what it brings to is looking back on your experience, seeing others, what do you think are the biggest difficulties? What are the downsides of becoming an entrepreneur about which people should be aware?
Well, just for starting, 80% of the entrepreneurs fail. 80% of the small businesses fail. That's a cold data. So what that means is every 10 business started, only 2 of them or 3 of them make it. So that's a high failure rate. So it doesn't mean that failure should prevent you from taking initiatives, because we take risk every day in our life. So keep in mind, being an entrepreneur is like a roller coaster ride in some ways, but it is a lot more than that. It could be emotionally draining. Sometimes I found the biggest problem for me, Gary, was I felt lonely. I felt lonely many, many times, because that's why building a team is very, very important from the beginning, especially if you have a like-minded person. Many of the successful companies, if you look at it, I'm not sure if it is true for all the companies. If you look at Bill Gates, Paul Allen, David Filo was with someone else in Yahoo. Sergey Brin is along with Larry Page in Google. So in many, many companies, you'll see 2 or 3 people founders, and those seem to be very successful because they were able to work together. I felt lonely many times because I was the founder. I got to do the content development. I got to raise money. I got to do the marketing. I got to reach out for everything, like hiring employees. When you do all of those things early on without help, it is taxing. But all these issues, whether it is taking the risk or taking all these responsibilities, is it all worth it? 100%. There is nothing more satisfying than conceiving an idea and turning them into reality. In fact, that is what engineers do in a smaller level, but with an entrepreneur level, it is reaching a mass.
Well, I think that's really important. And I think people should also be aware of the stresses being an entrepreneur will put on a lot of other relationships. If you're married, you're going to be putting in long hours, and you are going to be forced to do things that your partner may not think are the wisest things. You're going to be potentially putting your own money into a project, etc. As you said, most entrepreneurial businesses fail, but there's also been a lot of study now as to why those businesses fail, and the overwhelming answer is not enough time was spent researching customer needs, customer discovery. And if there's one thing that I think anyone interested in entrepreneurial activity should focus on, is what does it mean, customer discovery? But it's almost easier to define the opposite. So many businesses spend so much time developing a product, actually building prototypes, coming up with a website, etc., and then get out there and find out nobody cares. Nobody's willing to write a check. It's a lot better to find that out at the beginning than at the end. And it's a lot better to have really good knowledge of the customer before you ask to use somebody else's money, because there's another tension that will be introduced. If you don't spend that money well, if you don't achieve the objectives you laid out, you immediately have some difficult conversations, and you also have made it difficult to raise more money again. So I think that's something people need to grasp, is customer discovery. And you mentioned a great one too, team building. You're in school, rarely do you get an opportunity to do really good team building. It's great when teams are put together to do things like the senior projects in engineering, or you might have some other class project you're trying to do. But understanding how to assemble and manage a team is a skill that most engineering students don't focus on. If you're thinking of an entrepreneurial career, you have to find ways to get involved in projects to see how this is done, because the best management, in my estimation, is management that's invisible. It's coaching, it's encouraging, and it's getting people to make the right decisions or engage in the right processes as though they're the ones who thought of it. And that's a skill, how you get there. So it's broadening out and thinking about that. That the result of this is that for a lot of engineering students, I don't know whether it's a good idea to make your first step out in a career after you get your degree forming your own business, or whether you shouldn't try to get something inside another business, even if it's a small one, to where you can learn some of these things and build your skills before you step out. I mean, you had the experience, Javo, of being with another organization. I certainly did. But occasionally there are the examples like Steve Jobs, who really didn't have employment with a big organization before he did what he did. But I had a son who was very interested in becoming a professional athlete. It's the same sort of thing. When you have that thought in high school, you got to realize how low the probability is that you're actually going to become a professional athlete. So you have to understand it's probably a low probability that you're going to become Steve Jobs and be a billionaire. Whether you're going to make a very comfortable life on it, there's a lot higher probability on that. But it's a stepwise thing, and there's a lot to learn. Absolutely. So yeah, somebody asked, are there any books that help you build your entrepreneurial mindset? Oh yeah, there's a whole bunch. We put a resource page up on our site, but one of the best is some books by a guy named Steve Blank, who was a professor at Harvard, and at Stanford, and he's also at Berkeley. And I'm looking through to see whether I still have it on my desk, but it's basically a book about how to become an entrepreneur. So there's that. If you just go on Google and ask Google, how do you become an entrepreneur, becoming an entrepreneur, you'll get a whole list. That's the advantage of where we are right now. There's so much information out there. There are classes that Carlson Center offers, Clean Start offers, Startup SAC offers, to give you the opportunity to test your skills, build your skills, etc. Of course, we're doing some of that tomorrow in our pitch competition with teams of engineering students, and anybody who hasn't signed up to listen to those but is interested in entrepreneurship probably should sign up. But there's a lot of books. But Javo, from your perspective, where are the resources to go to learn about how to become an entrepreneur, independent of classes, but just written resources or Google searches? What's your perspective?
You mean for SAC students or in general? For SAC
I
students,
think in
right?
general.
Yeah. Well, in a place like Sac State, I am new here, but I am already getting acquainted with so many resources. First of all, if you are a senior project student, your advisor could be the great resource to start with. But if you have an entrepreneurial idea early on, I think Carlson Center at Sac State is the best place to get started, because they would help you to at least provide the resources or where to go. But in addition to Sac State resources, if you just go outside, hundreds of incubators, low-end incubators. People give you $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 type of funding if you have a great idea. There are so many of them. A simple Google search will bring them incubators. Also, I don't want you to underestimate another resource today. I say this because this resource did not exist when I was doing entrepreneurial activities. Today, you have things like crowdfunding. For example, Kickstarter and Indiegogo and hundreds of other websites. These websites, you can actually raise as low as $5,000 or $10,000. And the reason I am recommending these resources is at least 15, 20 of my students so far have gone to those crowdfunding sources to test their idea. What is the best way to test your idea? Put it out there. Now, you cannot raise money. You cannot pitch your idea. Put it on one of those crowdfunding sources and see if there is a traction. Come back, work on it, tinker it, go back again. There are people who went to Kickstarter for the third time to get the funding, all with no cost because it is free, right? So these type of resources did not exist 20 years ago. They exist now. In addition, incubators, places like Carlson Center, books, as well as if you are having an idea to a level where you can take it to the next level after testing, You can even apply for grants. For example, one of my a bunch of my students have received SBIR grants from NSF, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, things like that. These grants are, a lot of people think that it is very difficult to get, but often people don't take the time to write for those grants. Also, there are smaller organizations such as VentureWell. They would fund smaller ideas. If you have an idea, you can propose an idea for a $5,000, $10,000 funding. And if you are able to pitch and get that funding and show progress, you can get the next level of funding. All these things are available today. So I think today our students are in a much better position than, say, 20 years ago. And the chances of failure is low. And even if they fail, you fail, you don't, it's not a disaster that occurred. You are 25, 26 years old and you had a minor failure. That's the best thing that can happen. For me, it happened at 40. Think about the difference with my family failing, or you want to fail at 25. Fail fast. You got to experiment and fail as soon as possible so that you can bounce back. And you can do that when you are young as a college student.
Absolutely. So I finally turned around on my bookshelf and I found the book I was looking for. I don't know whether this comes up backwards or not, but it's the Startup Owner's Manual. It's Steve Blank and Bob Dorff. And what they described is something called the business model canvas. And that's sort of now the gold standard of a good evidence-based process for founding and running an entrepreneurial business. So many people teach it now, Carlson Center and Clean Start and many others, but there are definite resources out there available. So, all right, so we're going to have to move on. We want to involve our panel. So let me just wrap up here. Thank you, Jawa, for those insights.
Thank you.
And hopefully everybody appreciated the discussion. I see the chat room's been very active. That's great. And let me turn it back to Thomas, and we'll introduce the panel and get started on that discussion. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating. Please hang in there. We've got lots of more interesting stuff to come.
Okay. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Jawa. That was really informative. I really appreciate that. First, before we get into the panel, we're going to have a quick interlude of some of the resources that are in the area and what Clean Start is doing. If you're curious about what all these resources that you heard Jawa and Gary Simon talk about, there is a map of all the resources in the Sacramento region on startupsac.com. They're another partner of pretty much all the organizations around here. Here's a link to their site if you want to go check it out. But they have it broken down between colleges, universities, accelerators, incubators, funding opportunities, and more. Hold on one second. Cameron, can you make sure that annotations are turned off?
Sure, I will
Okay.
check it out.
Okay. And with that, Clean Start is here. What does Clean Start to do? Clean Start is a place for clean tech to connect. We were founded in 2005 after a year-long study by SMUD and the CEC, and we identified the need for a central rallying point in the greater Sacramento area. And we started off with the goal to create 10,000 jobs and $5 billion in revenue. What that looks like right now is this clean tech map of all these companies around here. A lot of these companies have engineers from Sac State working at them, along with from other colleges at Sac State. And they've been getting a lot of interest and investment growing our region into a clean tech hub. And we try to bring all these resources together to get them to talk and communicate at our events that we put on, our Clean Start web meetings, which we've actually now had 38 of with over 900 attendees, investor pitch nights, clean tech showcases, clean tech meetups. These are just some things. If you want to learn more about them, go check it out at cleanstart.org. And what we really want to do is prepare companies to get investment ready. If you have an idea, come to us. We'll connect you with experts. We'll get your tech readiness level. We'll help you get that next step so that you can grow and connect with funding resources like CalSeed, Empower Innovation, and Cal Testbed. So where do you start if you have a clean tech idea around mobility, grid management, distributed energy resources, and more, demand control, software-oriented things? You start with Clean Start. So Thank you very much for letting me run through that really quick. And with that, I would like to move on to our panel discussion. We'll have three panelists led by Gary Simon. If you have questions, feel free to submit them into the chat there. They're going to be talking about how engineering and entrepreneurship mix, engineering entrepreneurs, how they're critical to climate change, and how engineers can really impact their local community with the work that they do. And with that, I'd like to welcome and introduce our three panelists, starting off with Melanie Okoro. Melanie Okoro is the founder and CEO of EcoAlpha Environmental Engineering Services. Dr. Okoro has more than 15 years of experience in natural resource protection, water management, environmental stewardship, and her background is in leadership training, or her background in leadership training provide her with an exceptional level of unique expertise in California and beyond integrated environmental and engineering management challenges. And also I'd like to welcome Isabel Gutierrez. Isabel Gutierrez is CEO and founder of Vistindo. She is passionate about youth athlete health and has experienced and witnessed the suffering associated with youth athlete injuries, both as a soccer player and as certified first responder. She has a BS in mechanical engineering from Cal Poly in Pomona and has a love for technology and sports and has a commitment to help others. Additionally, I'd like to welcome Mark Henwood, manager at PowerSoft and co-founder of Clean Start. He's very familiar with private power generation, currently operates 5 hydroelectric generation facilities. He pretty much knows the kind of power generation market inside and out, from marketing to contract compliance and settlements. And he works with companies that need help dealing with the increasing complexity of the power market. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Gary Simon to lead our panel.
All right, well, thanks so much, Thomas, and thanks so much to the panelists for joining us today. I'm going to start with Melanie, because Melanie, you have sort of a unique window on the world, given that you're not only building your own organization, but you're doing workforce development, and you're bringing a lot of engineers into the fold to work on creative projects, some of which are surely going to become their own entrepreneurs in there. You definitely have a background with Sac State. What would you offer in terms of insights into students that are interested now coming out of the engineering school, getting their degrees soon, and even those that may be freshmen and sophomores and are searching around? What is your view from the perspective you've seen in terms of finding jobs in this new entrepreneurial climate, and particularly in the environmental area?
I think, thank you first, Gary and Thomas and Cameron, for inviting me to the panel discussion today. I'm really excited about joining the discussion and talking with students today. And I think, one of the most important areas that we look for when we're thinking about bringing in students into our organization and building a pipeline, especially in Sacramento, in the engineering field, is a student that can be flexible, right? When you're talking about being an entrepreneur, you're not just focused on one specific task or one specific project. What you're asked to do is adapt to the environment that you're in. And as a small business, we have many projects that we're working on, whether they're environmental, civil, mechanical, and training programs. And so we're going to need students that are willing to come in and jump on a project, bring their creative thinking, innovative thinking to projects, and be a team player. And it turns out that being a team player is probably one of the most important components of being in this field, and collaboration. It's so important, especially right now when we're going through COVID-19 disruption. If you can jump on board and be a team player and adapt to the changing environment, I think really that's when innovation starts to happen.
That's really great, and again emphasizes the point on learning how to work in teams. and getting experience in that, and gaining skills, so important to the way you develop your career after coming out of school. So I'd like to turn to Mark Henwood now. Mark has created more businesses than I can remember, not the least of which, Mark, was an innovative ideas. Up on the Henwood property in Yuba City, when you had to take out all those olive trees, Mark said, why don't we slice up all these olive trees and make belt buckles out of them? I still have that belt buckle, Mark. But you've seen the whole cycle too. With Henwood Energy, you built an organization into hundreds of employees and sold it. So you had the joy of getting to an exit. And now you've developed more. You've got a business on small hydro, and that's, I guess, become your retirement plan, because you've done very well of automating all that, and now you just get deposits into your bank account. But you're a double engineer, mechanical engineer and electrical. And what would you say were essential skills, or what's the process here that students should go to, thinking about what do I need to add to my toolkit to go out there in the working world? Maybe not as an entrepreneur, but there's a lot of people looking for good talent in entrepreneurial firms, and how do you integrate with that? You've seen it from soup to nuts.
Anyway, Gary, thank you for the kind introduction. And yes, I still have one of the old belt buckles as well. I've got to kind of echo what Java was mentioning, and I think you mentioned, Gary, is, I started in my entrepreneurial career quite some time ago, and there were not a lot of incubators around. There were not a lot of mentors around. And so there was a lot of self-learning that went on. And I would recommend that nowadays people can avoid a lot of that self-learning and take advantage of the experience of others. And, if I were entrepreneurially minded, and I was, by the way, from the get-go, if I were entrepreneurially minded, I would be seeking to improve my education outside of my core expertise. And, people have to have a core expertise. You don't just get hired because you're a great person. Your company gets hired because you're delivering something that the customer wants. And so that requires core expertise, but the organization requires more than just that core expertise. The organization requires things like product management and sales skills and the ability to finance things and the human resource capability of building and motivating and retaining team members. And so I would suggest that the young entrepreneur, the young person going out into the business world, if they had the idea of becoming more than just a subject matter expertise and taking a larger role in the organization, they need to actively work on their education. And one of the areas that I found most useful to me was wrapping my head around the concept of product management. And I think the modern organization will typically have some group called the product managers, and those people really are the quarterbacks of the product that the organization is delivering. And that way of thinking about yourself as being a quarterback of a product allows you to open your mind up to think about all of the elements of what make a successful product, but also get you out of just the minutia of making a really cool device, but into making a really cool device that people want to buy. And so I guess my initial advice to the new students would be, if you are entrepreneurially minded, you have some learning to do. Fortunately for you, you have a lot of resources to do that learning now, and I would strongly recommend people take advantage of that. And I think a good place to start, is learn some basic accounting skills and then start thinking about this role of the product manager, the business kind of coach for the product. So some initial thoughts, Gary.
Oh, okay, that's great. Let me turn to Isabel. Now, yours is not necessarily a clean tech company, but you've had an interesting journey too. Tell us a bit about what some of the key insights were in your journey, and particularly making connections and networking, because a lot of people find that so important, to be able to tap other people's skills and just get known and get connected. So comment on that if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again for having me here. So I really, I was huge into sports growing up, and I really saw, there was a lot of injuries going untreated and creating serious problems later on. And so that's kind of where I initially first saw, the problem that I eventually am now solving. Graduating from bachelor's, I had a bachelor's in mechanical engineering from Cal Poly Pomona, and I quickly made the transition to becoming an entrepreneur. And I quickly learned two things. First, networking is number one. Getting connected to people, talking with people, learning from them, understanding their experiences, understanding their pain points, really helps you. It helped me to build something that I wanted to help solve and address all of these problems that everyone's having. And then, networking with other entrepreneurs, having those mentors. I think, I was very lucky and fortunate to have mentors that had gone through entrepreneurship that really guided me and really helped me understand, the entrepreneur is tough, but overcoming challenge, they were right there with me. And so I really got to learn a lot from them, which is so important. Networking is really fundamental. I believe, especially to understand kind of the entrepreneurship world and learn from others, and is so key.
Well, that's great. It's not uncommon, and I don't mean this as a negative, but a lot of engineering students, and maybe students in general, are pretty shy. They like working with things. They like working in the lab. They like researching and writing a paper. Talking to people, not necessarily a key skill. So forcing yourself to get out there and network and mix and mingle, even if it's not on a team, even if it's not directed towards creating a business, can be useful to you. And I think that's sort of what you found, isn't it, Isabel, that you kind of just had to put yourself out there in order to get the connections that have become so valuable in what you've built.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I completely understand with, being shy. When I first entered college, I probably was about the shyest person you could ever think of. I didn't want to talk to anyone. You would barely even know I was in your class. But I quickly realized that this was something that was so important, talking to others and engineering is teamwork is very big in engineering. And so if you don't talk to others, there's no way you're going to solve any problem. So I just kind of, heard an important phrase, and I kind of live by it, and it's just start by doing one thing. So I would just challenge myself every day to just say hi to one person, just push myself. And, a couple of years later, I don't really consider myself shy anymore, but it's really helped me because I think, everyone's a cup of tea. But if you just yourself, you can really start to learn so much more than if you just sell to yourself from your classmates or your network as well.
Well, yeah, that's an important idea there. Just, force yourself to talk to one additional person a day. Pretty soon it just becomes second nature. And there are organizations all over this region. Startup Sack, Clean Start, Startup Grind, that put on these sorts of networking events. And really, you have to approach them not so much for learning about the topic of the meeting, but all the time before the meeting and after the meeting when you meet other people. It's amazing the number of random connections result in creativity, great ideas, and actually getting a lead on something that helps you so much in what you're doing in your career or in building a business. And I'm going to step a little outside the panel here, and I apologize to Soraya in advance. But Soraya is one of our interns. She's a computer science engineering student from Sac State. Soraya, a lot of times people have an aha moment where you realize, oh, that was really important. And you've been an intern with us now for several months. Do you have an aha moment that's occurred to you in the course of your studies and your work with us that you care to share with your engineering student colleagues here?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. When I started working at Clean Start, I got put on a team to help with green drinks. And I feel like that was my big aha moment in being able to reach out to the community and have them come talk about what they're passionate about, and kind of just finding people. I felt like that networking, kind of what we were talking about, being able to find people that also interest me. I felt like that was my aha moment, and like, whoa, these entrepreneurs also have these really cool passions, and there's so many that they can come together and have a whole panel discussion about it.
Well, thank you for that. And you've, by the way, been doing a great job on putting green drinks together. And you've also been forced to do a bunch of writing, probably more than you wanted to do, but writing skills are important too. So let me turn back to Melanie. What other skills would you like to see in students that come out? I mean, you're trying to fit them into all sorts of jobs, get them on teams, etc. What other skills do you see people should try to acquire before they graduate?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. One of the most important skills that I think is the negotiation skills. I think that's extremely important. It includes learning a little bit about emotional intelligence, which I think is very important as well. But, one thing that's so much fun to me is I'm going into rooms where folks have different ways of thinking, right? And turning the tide. I really get excited about that, right? Someone that necessarily didn't think the way that I was thinking, and all of a sudden we're walking out of a room, laughing, having a conversation about how we're going to work together. And I think that's very important, not only in your professional career, but also your personal life as well. That skill is one that I think is honed over time, one that I continuously work on, and I think it's very important, especially when you're sitting down talking, for example, with an employer, and you might, want a little bit of flexibility in your job, or you're looking for higher pay, or you're trying to get that investor to invest in your company. And having negotiation skills, knowing a little bit about what to expect can really, I think, help students in that process. I think it's important too when you join a team. There are going to be many times where you just don't agree, right? You might come to a blockade. And working through that is also a part of negotiations as well. It increases, I think, your level of understanding of others and how they think, so that you can take that in and then receive it. And then once it comes back out, it's in a way I think that can benefit all. And I think that's probably one of the most important skills I think students can have and work on as they move forward. Yeah.
Fantastic. And coming back to Mark, you've had the experience now. I mean, I remember when Henwood Energy was essentially a room in a converted motel in downtown Sacramento with like filing cabinets in the bathtub because there wasn't any more room for them. To building an organization, I think at one point you surely had more than 200 people there. Comment on leadership and management skills, and maybe add to that, if you would, was there a management or leadership mistake that, you don't have to be specific, but that, you wish you could have avoided, or that you learned the most out of in terms of building an organization? And building an organization is important, not only if you're in an entrepreneurial setting, but if you're in a company as well. Eventually, all of us are going to have to learn to work in a team as we build a career. So comment on that, Mark.
That's a complicated question you just asked, Gary. What could I say about building an organization? Well, you need to be prepared to make many compromises. Along the lines of what Melanie is talking about, first off, these are private organizations. People are there voluntarily. They don't have to work for your company. So you have to first have a mindset that you want to create an organization that's a desirable place for people to work. Your corporate culture has to be one that's attracting high quality people, because you want high quality people. So the leadership of the organization has to conduct themselves in a way that is conducive to attracting the right kind of people, retaining the right kind of people, and compensating them appropriately. And that's frankly at the start where a lot of the negotiation and compromise comes in, because when you start your company, at the very start, you own 100% of your company. At the very end, when you sell your company, it's unlikely you're going to own 100% of it. And so every bit of your company's equity that goes out the door is the result of a negotiation, either involving funding in the company or getting a valuable personnel resource to stay with the company. And depending on the kind of company you have, these negotiations and compromises are more or less difficult. We originally, or one of the pathways I took originally was as a consulting organization, where really the assets of your business are your employees. And it's created lots of tensions, because some employees became highly skilled at the area that they were an expert in, had many opportunities to pursue business on their own account. And in some cases, they did do that. But in other cases, the result of that organization retained those people, or the result of the discussion retained the people and allowed me to build the organization. Later on in the company's development, or at least in my company's development, we intentionally became product oriented, because that created more company oriented value, less negotiation with the people who work for the company. And we then retained people through different kinds of mechanisms. But I'd say building an organization is an exercise in compromises, and be prepared to make a lot of them. And some of them you're not 100% happy with. And I did ultimately make some compromises I wish I hadn't. At the end of the day, it worked out okay. But kind of my recommendation to the new entrepreneur is be prepared to be compromising.
Flexible. All right.
Yeah, flexible.
Isabel, if you could comment on the leadership issue, but also add to it your experience and what you've had to do to raise money to come together to build your organization. And, if there are two things that I've noticed in people coming out of scientific or engineering backgrounds in campuses, one has been they need to do more in working with people, building teams, etc. Another is just in dealing with money. It isn't something that you come out of a university experience understanding a whole lot about. And so a lot of that is just on the fly learning. What was your experience like in leadership, and then secondly on fundraising?
Yeah, so just to touch upon the leadership, I think for me it was always about uniting people against solving a common problem. And Mark touched upon it. It's really about creating that culture that everyone enjoys and everyone really stands for, and is all working for the same solutions. I think it's all about just making sure what I found out is it's important to care about what your customers are interested in, and what they're looking for, but also your employees as well. I think it's about understanding where they're at, where they want to go, and just kind of really taking care of your employees just as you would take care of your customers. And then touching upon raising money, as an engineer, it's all about let's build the coolest product that we can. Let's just jump into all the engineering stuff. I quickly realized that a big part of starting a company is raising money. And it's something that, you have to be focused on every day. Because if you don't raise money, there is no cool project to work on. And there's no cool team to, build that atmosphere. So I quickly realized, raising money is kind of a daily task, and it's not something that you wait on. And so, you touched upon, we live now in an area where there's a lot of different ways to raise money, crowdsourcing, grants, VCs, investors, angel, all that stuff. And early on, the first thing I did is I just cold called people. I told them about the problem I was trying to solve, and I wanted their help in order to solve it. And I quickly realized that, a lot of people were connecting to what I was solving through personal experiences or something that they had seen their children go through. And so it was all about just cold reaching out, trying to raise that initial money to get us started. And then I started looking into grants. There's a bunch of grants out there for small businesses. And, we were actually awarded a phase 1 grant from the U.S. Defense Health Agency for TBI detection in veterans and service members. So these are just different ways that, that I just kind of looked into just because raising money was important, and something that I think, very quickly as an engineer, you realize that it's a big part of the entrepreneurship world.
Well, that's great. But, again, you sort of learned as you went on doing that. And it's something, again, that a lot of connections have helped you. And I think some of the entrepreneurial education is just being unafraid to ask dumb questions. Would you agree with that?
No, absolutely. I think it's just about, you have to realize that, you need to learn a bunch of stuff real quick, and you have to be open to that learning and not being afraid to turn to anyone and be like, hey, I don't understand this. Can you help me out? Or just, as you said, asking the dumb question, because then and then you don't have to wonder that anymore.
Yeah. Well, you were mentored by Java while you were a student and building your business. Tell us about that experience and is it best to use a mentor?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to have, Dr. Jha was one of my mentors. When I first started, my company, I knew he was one of the first people I had to talk to because I knew he had all that experiences, and I want to learn. I wanted to learn as much as I could from him. And so I reached out to him, we started talking, and he really helped me understand, what are the difficulties I was going to face. And he really did help me, he really gave me that inside knowledge to starting a company. And it was very valuable and continues to be valuable. He continues to be my mentor, and it's something that, I really appreciate. And I think I don't think you can start a company without having mentors. I think having mentors is one of, the key stuff, because not only do you learn from everyone else and your own experiences, but you get to learn from what they've already gone through, and that's just invaluable. So, I think, the first thing I turned to was my professors, because I had great relationships with them, and they just have so much experience and so much knowledge that they've acquired that I was lucky enough to get a little bit passed down to me.
Well, it's so important to accelerate your learning in any way that you can. And as you say, often just listening to a coach, getting their help is a great way to do that. So appreciate that insight. I'm also going to lean on somebody here outside the panel, but Dale Carlson, it's his name on the Carlson Center. He's got a passion for developing entrepreneurs, and he's been a very successful entrepreneur here in the Sacramento area. Let me just ask him to add his insights to the discussion we've been having on this panel, because you too have seen it all the way from soup to nuts, and now you've had good experiences dealing with students through the Carlson Center. What insights are you getting out of the conversation this morning that you'd like to add?
Well, first of all great points. Everybody has done a fabulous job, and the panel's been excellent. Thank you, panel, for being here today. Entrepreneurship is a growth experience. You go through a lot as the challenges that are there, as well as how do you learn. The whole reason for the Carlson Center that we wanted the Carlson Center was when I started, I really didn't have that kind of an environment to reach out to. And so, I surrounded myself, as I put in the chat there. My dad told me, if you want to be successful, surround yourself with good people, treat them right, and make everybody successful. And that's really where I kind of believe built our company, was finding the right people. So it's a critical aspect of your growth. And right people isn't only your employees, but it's your vendors, your partners, your investors. You need to find the right group that matches what you believe in and what your values are and what you want to achieve. And that's a hard task. And you need to be able to cut, as I think Mark said, one of you said, if it's not working, you need to be able to cut and move on to the next one. I'd love to answer any other questions or anything. I'm not sure what all I could put into that. The panel's done a great job, but I just really encourage everybody, reach out, surround yourself with people, ask questions. Find out what you can do. And with my people, one of the things I would say, surrounding yourself with people, it means listening to your team too. It's your idea, but it's going to be a better idea if you really let those that are around you be part of it. It took me a while to open up and let my team be part of it, but it was once I opened up and brought the team completely in and let them help run the company and help decide where we went, that we took off. So I'd really encourage you to make sure to open your ears to the people that you're around and listen to what they're saying as well. Any other thoughts, Gary?
Well, you have a great passion for this entrepreneurial training, obviously, in endowing the Carlson Center. What are your aspirations on what's the best way students could use the Carlson Center?
It really depends on what you're at. There's so many programs that they have put together there, depending on where you're at in your journey. If you're just interested, there's this whole week is about that. If you want to build your company, there's the programming that's put in place there. I would just reach out to Cameron and the team and the rest of the people there. Let them know what you're interested in, and they'll get you plugged into where you need to go. As well as the thing that's exciting about how we've developed the Carlson Center and what Cameron and the team there have done is that it's not just a Sac State product. It is a hub for the whole region. So they can connect you with people throughout the region that are interested in what you're interested in. So that's all what the reason the Carlson Center exists, is to be that hub for the region. So you've got resources there that are outside the university. You've got resources there that are in the university. You've got great faculty that are very engaged in the center and in entrepreneurship to reach out to. So they can put you kind of in connection with the right direction for what you're looking for. Just reach out and ask.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And Cameron's been putting on the chat, contact him. They have office hours. They can sit down and talk with you. Doesn't matter that you may just be starting your journey, or if you already have a company and you're just trying to get advice on a particular point. They have access to a number of coaches and mentors in the area, myself included. And they will find a way to help you. I think that's so important to just, don't feel any barrier to just reaching out and contacting Cameron directly and getting plugged in. And of course, he has great help there with Brian Gladen and Jesse Becker Alexander, people that have entrepreneurial experience too. But let me turn back to the College of Engineering and Computer Science. The other associate dean is Kevon, and you've got a really good insight into the kind of experience your faculty have. Many of them do have entrepreneurial experience or experience in other companies. Talk a little bit about that, how best to use the faculty of ECS if you're interested in learning more about business opportunities, entrepreneurship. Oh, I'm seeing that Kevon just stepped out of the room. So Cameron, just give him the high sign when he comes back. Let me turn to Jesse Becker-Alexander. You're a good entrepreneur too. So any other insights into what you've learned with being with the Carlson Center that you'd like to share with the engineering students here in the discussion?
Thanks for asking, I guess. I guess I would just say, you know, the company that I founded came out of an engineering project out of a university. And so it's real. If you have an idea and you can reach out to the Carlson Center and get connected to different resources, it just get started would be my advice. There's no reason not to try, reach out and see what you can do. Just, you know, get started. That would be, it's really simple advice, I guess, but you don't know what you can do until you try.
Yeah, well, that's sometimes the best advice right there. Let me just open it up to any of our panel members, Melanie, Isabel, or Mark. Any other comments you'd like to add to what we've discussed here, things that I haven't mentioned?
I'd just like to talk a little bit about, I know we talked about the things that, you know, students or entrepreneurs might experience or skills that they might want to attain as they go on their journey, but I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience as an entrepreneur and risk and taking risk and being okay with taking risk. How important it is to take that thought in your head and put it down on paper and produce a product. It's not an easy process, and stepping out on what I would call faith, but really is your knowledge, your expertise, your passions is really important, but that doesn't come without anxieties, maybe, right? Or feeling as though you don't know everything that you need to know in order to do that. And one of the things I just wanted to share with the group that's listening is that that's okay. Over the years, I've found ways to embrace the unknown and really get excited about what's around the next corner. And creating programs, training programs in the energy sector for individuals who live and work in low-income communities is for me one of those passions. And sometimes you don't know what's around the corner. All you know is that you want to help and solve a problem. And so you want to work and develop that solution. And that doesn't come without risk, right? So learning to embrace risk, prepare for it, understand and talk to as many people as you possibly can. Again, Gary talked about the importance of network, so did Isabel. And developing a team around you that you can consult and confide in so that you lower your risk as much as you possibly can so you can continue to move forward and be successful.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. And Isabel, are there other things that you would like to add to the conversation here and things that people should know?
Yeah, I mean, I really want to echo what Melanie said. I think it's very important. You know, there's not a day that goes by that I don't start my day, you know, thinking about the risks that we take. You know, but I think it's all about, you know, I figured out early on that I loved sports. I loved engineering and I loved, you know, the medical and health world. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, that's a lot of different things that I love, you know, but I was able to kind of combine everything. And I think it's all about combining your passions. You know, if you're passionate about two things, find a way to combine them. And it's, you know, because then you'll really love what you're doing. And I think it's all about finding what you love to do, and solve, you know, whether it's, you know, a problem that you personally experienced, problem you've seen, anything that it might be, but just combining your experiences, combining your passions, is kind of what I've learned, and you know, I'm lucky enough to be doing something that I love, and I was able to combine all my passions. But I think it's also about, you know, realizing that, you know, don't be scared to start. I think the starting is always kind of the biggest thing people worry about is you start to think about all of the things that can go wrong, all of the things that may go right. But it's just about taking that first step and understanding that, there is a lot of risks. But if you love what you're doing, then don't be scared to take it, and, celebrate all of the victories that come your way, no matter how small, no matter how big. Celebrate those, with your team, with everyone around you that's helping you to solve this problem, because that's what's going to kind of make those bad moments not as bad.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I'd have to say, in my experience, a lot of things that have happened to me and have actually built my career have been fortunate accidents. But you have to be open to taking advantage of those things that just seem so random at the time, and take the risk and go ahead and do them. That's where a lot of the reward, in my case, has come from. But boy, if you would have asked me to plot out my career when even I graduated from UC Davis, it wouldn't look anything like what I actually did. But I wouldn't change a whole lot.
Gary, I got just a couple final comments too.
Sure.
Getting back to this topic of risk, it's interesting. Two of the entrepreneurs on the panel spent a lot of time talking about risk. I'll spend a lot of time talking about risk also. First off, when you go into a new business, you're obviously engaging in a risky undertaking, and before you do that, I think the entrepreneur has to have organized their life and their personal finances so that they can afford the risk. You may not make it through, and you have to be able to pick up your life and continue onwards. And so I think it's important for the entrepreneurs to organize their life or do the risk taking at a portion of their life where they can afford to do those risks. And it's going to be risky, but if you kind of got your backup plan, you're going to be okay one way or the other, it makes taking those risks much more acceptable. So I think people need to be cognizant of the risk and also have a plan for managing the risk. The other thing, I just want to stress again this thing about being an entrepreneur. It's a kind of a holistic experience. It's not just about the product. It's not just about the customers. It's not about your team. It's about all of those things working together. And you really have to work hard on thinking about your organization holistically and all the elements of it that have to work together to make it a success. You can have a great product, but if you have no sales capability, you're not going to succeed. Vice versa. Sales only get you so far. Your product has to be decent enough for a great salesperson to sell. So the entrepreneurs have to be, thinking of themselves kind of at the top of the mountain, surveying the complete landscape and making sure all those elements are working together and have a plan for all those elements of the business. So with that, it's been fun being on the panel, Gary. Thanks. You did a great job putting this together.
Oh, well, thanks for participating. And my thanks also to Melanie and to Isabel for joining, and all the people that I surprised by asking questions that were not on the panel. But at this point, I think we want to turn it back to Thomas and Cameron to wrap it up. I would say one of the big advantages that you should think about with the Carlson Center is they're a very low risk, low barrier way to ask any question that you have in mind, and explore. So don't be afraid to just walk in the door cold and have a conversation with them up there. It's why they're there. They have the passion about helping you. And so take advantage of that. And of course, there are other organizations, gosh, up in Chico, there's Chico Start, and UC Davis, the Graduate School of Management there, the Big Bang Process. They're all over the region, more than I could possibly list. Sierra College has some. So the opportunities are there. Please avail yourself of them if you're interested, even if you're just initially an observer and you watch what other people do. You'll learn out of that too. So back to Thomas and Cameron. I don't know which one of you are going to take the baton, but big round of applause for the panel and for all the participants in it. This has been a really great time. So thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that, Gary. Thank you, all of our panelists, our Fireside Chat, and everyone who's attended. I want to encourage you guys to check out the Global Entrepreneurship Week ECS virtual pitch competition tomorrow night. There's a link in the slides that you can click on to go and register. Additionally, I want to kind of start off or mention that since everyone was talking about networking and everything there, the report that founded Clean Start stated that the goal was to create an ecosystem that was like a beehive where everyone's running around bumping into each other and then poof, something comes out of it. So that's something that we're grateful that the Carlson is being this anchor hub here so that we all can bump into each other. And maybe your first idea isn't it, or you find someone who has a similar passion, but a different take on it, and then you build something great. So because of that, I also want to encourage you to check out Startup Sacks Happy Hour, which is part of GEW this week, along with the other events. And stay connected with us through all the social networks here. We have our regular Clean Start Perspectives with Fourth Wave coming up on December 1st and our Clean Tech Meetup, Utility and the Ratepayer. So stay connected with us. And if you have a clean tech idea, I really want to highlight this emblem right here. That's Empower Innovation. That's the kind of a social network site for energy innovation. So you can go there and learn about all sorts of different funding opportunities with that. And now I'm going to hand it back off to Cameron, who opened today.
Awesome. Well, thank you for everyone for being here and also just the amazing partnerships. I wanted to give a special thank you to the College of Engineering and Computer Science, particularly Associate Dean Kay Vaughn and Jawa. Just a really appreciate your partnership. And then, huge thank you to Thomas and Gary from Clean Start and collaborating on this event and really leading the discussion about, taking your engineering skills and really becoming that entrepreneur. So I thought this was a very powerful discussion, and then really appreciate all of our amazing panelists coming in and sharing their experience and expertise and their passions for entrepreneurship. So thank you, Melanie, Isabel, and Mark for being with us today. And so today is our second day of Global Entrepreneurship Week. We have 5 other events taking place today. So we have one coming up at 12 about entrepreneurs made at Sac State. So if you're interested in checking that out, we have a link in the chat to our Global Entrepreneurship Week website. And really to wrap it up is, Gary, Thomas, and a number of people talked about just, coming out and reaching out to us at the Carlson Center. As you can see, I'm not a very scary person. And no matter really where your idea is, I would love to have a conversation with you. Whether that's really helping you mobilize your idea or connecting you to an entrepreneur who might be working in that space, and you might be able to build capacity in a company that's already trying to get started. So we're really passionate about connecting individuals, and want you to know we're a resource and a community for you. We do have a student club on campus, which is called The Hive. It started this semester. So we had a couple of the leaders here. So we had Kashav and then AZ. So they'll be running a student panel on Friday. So if you want to engage with other entrepreneurial minded students, definitely check that out. And then we look forward to seeing you on Wednesday at the college pitch competition. So thank you again, and we'll see you at the rest of the week.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.